Hello, Yann. How are you?
Hello, Anders. I'm great, thank you. You can see it's nice and sunny here in California. It's February, but it's 22 degrees centigrade. So I can't complain. Most of my team is on the East Coast and they're suffering snowstorms right now. So I feel pretty smug.
And tell me, Left Field Labs, what is that?
Yeah, so maybe just a little bit of background. So this is Left Field Labs. So we are a creative tech company. That's what we say. We're a creative tech company. What we actually are is a design business that uses new and emerging technologies to give our clients a competitive advantage. And so a lot of what we do is for a lot of B2B companies, and we help them accelerate the adoption of new and emerging technologies. So they will come to us with, you've probably heard the term FOMO, with FOMO for an acronym. They'll say, I've heard about XR, I've heard about AR, I've heard about blockchain, I've heard about AI, obviously. And we will help them either adopt those technologies or we'll help them create brand experiences, products, platforms that leverage those technologies and give them a competitive advantage. Sometimes the answer isn't new technology, it's just good design. But in most cases, that's our sweet spot. We like to say that we make these big bets that they take real. So we don't really talk about them. And I realize the irony because I'm talking to you right now, but we don't really talk that much about it. It's more we take those technologies, we implement them, and we create measurable impact for our clients.
So it's not like a normal agency as such.
I mean, there's some parts of it that my background is an agency. And so there's some parts of it that you would recognize in the sense that we still pitch a lot of creative. We have members of the team that have transferable skills that you would see in agencies. So we have content creators, we have 3D designers and things like that. But it's the output that's very, very different. And then it's also the fact that we operate more like a software company than a traditional agency. A traditional agency will tend to go a bit more waterfall, from a project management standpoint. So they will, it's very much do this phase, then the next phase, and the next phase. We operate a lot more in an agile work stream. So clients will come with a challenge, a sometimes it's very ambiguous. So it's not a very well defined thing. It might be something like, we're realizing that our customers are going to a competitor, or it might be something like there is a new business on the market that is creating an existential threat for us. And so we will show up, we'll analyze their business, we'll understand what their challenges are, and then in many cases, we will, give them access to new growth, new customers, or sometimes completely a whole new business through experience design, through operation design, and then also everything that we do with new and emerging technologies.
Stacking paper like a book, not a Kindle. You outdated, I'm the one they getting into, and I don't break a sweat. Let's get it, 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 let's get it. I'm going all and you know I stay ballin'. I'm going all and you know I stay ballin'. I'm going all and you know I stay ballin'. I'm going all and you know I stay ballin'. Stay applying pressure, you already know how we play. Every time I step in, I deserve an instant replay. Get right to it, we ain't dealing with no delay. About to run this thing like a relay. You know it, baby. That's right. Enjoy the ride. Look at the crowd. They going wild. Look at me now. I'm all smiles. No sweat. Don't need a towel. I'm a big mood. I'm a big mood. You can't name a lot of things that I didn't do. Stacking paper like a book, not a Kindle. You outdated, I'm the one they getting into, and I don't break a sweat.
And what's your role in this?
So I lead creative and strategy. So really my role is to help the client define as articulately as we can what the challenge is, come up with how to create a solution that is on brand, but is also going to be, from a performance standpoint, deliver the results that they want. So kind of a bit like what a consultancy would do. And then I have a team of creative technologists, so people who are 1 foot in creativity, and it could be visual creativity, it could be experiential architecture, it could be product design, and then 1 foot in engineering in most cases. So they might be software developers, they might be software architects, writing TDDs, technical design documents, etc. So we're like creating the in-between between brands that are looking to step into a brave new world of new and emerging technology, and then the Silicon Valley style firms themselves who develop, large language models or other technologies. And we tend to be the people in between who make these, who help these businesses capitalize on these new innovations.
And what kind of clients are you working with?
So most of our clients are in the B2B space.
Yeah, but
We are
can you
beginning
name
to
drop?
Okay, I'll name drop a couple. So I would say our longest client has been Google. With Google, we do everything from helping them build some of their more high-tech websites and online experiences. We've helped them develop products. We were involved in very early in Project Tango, which is now part of their AR, so augmented reality platform. But we also do things for Google I/O, which is their big annual event. And so if you go to googleio.com, you'll see there's a fun little puzzle. Many cases it uses AI tools in there, but they're like game-based and they're designed to engage developers. Other clients that we have are Salesforce, which is, you've already heard, the CRM company, and we're helping them market, but also create proof points for what they call the agentic enterprise, which is AIs that aren't just chatbots. They're AIs that can perform tasks on behalf of organizations at scale, and obviously on top of what they mostly do, which is cloud-based CRM tools and platforms. We do work for Meta. We did a lot of work for them in XR. So the Meta glasses, which were released this year, also project codename Orion, which is now public, which is XR glasses, which have the Llama model built in, the AI model. So you can speak to AI and it's contextual. So where you look with the glasses, the AI knows that you're looking at it. And so that opens up plenty of new, exciting experiences and opportunities to interact with the world. We've done a lot of work for Meta, for Amazon, in automotive space. We helped companies like Ford and Toyota adopt these new technologies, find new, exciting experiences to do in vehicle. We helped them launch the Mach-E, which is their first ground-up EV. We designed the center stack. We were one of the partners. Many partners were involved in this, but we helped them design like some hero features for it. So things like that. I can go on forever, but it's mostly, I would say, the common thread are companies that are at an inflection point because technology, market, and their core business is all becoming shaken, and they need a partner to help them define a vision and then build the first real proof points for it.
So that's, of course, one of the reasons why I wanted to bring you here to Tønsberg Film Festival, is, of course, how you kind of are in the middle of this big, where it happens, basically, because the things that happen in Silicon Valley, they affect the whole world, of course, and after a few years, changes that happen there often tends to arrive here somewhat later. So it's really cool. So to hear, what's the atmosphere, what's the vibe, what's the trend, what's the zeitgeist in these big corporate environments?
That's such a big question. So you can probably hear from my accent, I'm French and British. So I didn't grow up in the US. So I've only been here just over 10 years now. And it's been through many changes. I mean, you're right. Like I would say California as a whole is the 4th largest economy. And if you look at the pie of where it creates most value, it is, big tech by far. And one of the interesting things is I don't live in San Francisco. Most of my clients do, and I'm regularly over there in the Bay Area. But I am in the space where a lot of the content that I grew up with, the movies, I live not far from the beach where I remember seeing, people in red swimsuits running in slow motion. It sort of defined my childhood in some extent, a lot of the content that came from here. And so you've got two big worlds, one which is in some respects defining a lot of culture for the world, and one that's defining a lot of tech and innovation, and they're coexisting in this, desert strip of land and creating all this wealth. What's interesting is that they are kind of odd bedfellows in some ways. Silicon Valley has this, belief that technology will save the world. That what you need is just some brilliant engineers and the right tools, and any problem is solvable. And Hollywood is more like the legacy, mega industry here, where it's being a little bit frazzled by all this, a bit more than frazzled. And I'll give you some practical examples. So we do build AI post-production pipelines for our clients. So that's where both the worlds that we operate in come together. So brands will come to us and say, we have a lot of content that needs to be brand accurate, that we spend hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions on, but they're fairly repetitive. So think graphics or content that is, I would call it through the line, if you call it in marketing. So maybe not the above the line adverts you see at the Super Bowl, and not the stuff that is like a podcast or like a training video, but the bits in between. And we will build complete pipelines that can then allow them to generate their own ads and content on the fly with AI content completely. And it's on brand, it's approved. So, because of NDAs, I can't discuss which companies, but I think I can say that you have to imagine that most companies currently in the US who are B2B have something similar or are exploring it. So I think maybe five years ago, there was the realization that these tools are here, and yes, they caught a lot of attention, but are they actual real business tools? It looked a bit like a bad acid trip with most of it. So the credibility of it was not quite there as a business tool. Over the past 5 years, the models have improved dramatically. The top hat tools that you sit on top of it and the pipelines have also improved, which means that creatives have more control over those tools. The legislation, copyright, etc., is beginning to catch up, although that's trailing behind. So I would say, depending on who you speak to, there's either acceptance that these are the tools that are here to stay, or there is still some malaise, I would say, with the more traditional Hollywood, which is saying, well, and we had film directors here recently. We had a big event to do with Hollywood and AI here at the office, private event, phones down. So I can't discuss who attended, but I can talk about the headlines. So some directors were committed to using these technologies. So they might be working for a big studio, like a Universal or a Disney, etc., and they're building AI labs where they're beginning to test and iterate on content. There are actually some movies right now in the theaters that have sequences that were generated with AI and then composited in post-production. They're not vocal about it, but they are currently in theaters right now. There are some which where they were vocal. If you know the movie The Brutalist that came out recently, the biopic basically of the architect. The architect was Hungarian, and he couldn't nail his accent when he was speaking Hungarian. So they used AI and trained it on his voice, so he speaks perfect Hungarian. So those are examples where Hollywood is beginning to adopt these technologies, and they feel it improves their art form and the authenticity of the content that they create.
Yeah, I think.
But at the same time, yeah,
Let's get back to the sort of that core
Yeah.
film storytelling. I was just going a bit more
Yeah.
around in terms of so in the whole business world. So what I've understood is, is AI a bubble or not? Is it affecting the work market? How is kind of the whole business around this AI, not just film, but in all the creative industries and the, what do you see there?
So, I'm not going to give any advice on what shares to buy or anything like that. I'm not a financial expert, but I would say the bubble question is a question that obviously we talk a lot about. So, yes, there's a bubble, and no, there isn't a bubble. So here's what I mean by that. So, yes, there is a bubble in the sense that if you look at the investment made and the returns, not all businesses that have heavily invested with AI are going to make it on the other side. And I would compare this to the beginning of the internet. How many of you are still using AOL, right? So there is going to be a change of guards where the investment has been so high that it's going to be incredibly difficult for $1 trillion company to recoup that investment. So you will see some change, and it's going to be a bumpy road for sure.
But yeah, because like in terms of software, using AI to make code, there's been studies saying that, for instance, some developers claim that they are 20% faster now that they can get the AI to code things, but when they're measured, they're actually 20% slower, or they get into dangerous territory when the AI just makes so much code that they can't revise it, or it becomes so complicated that they don't know, they ship in code that they don't know what is, basically, and so it's like
you're basically saying, I mean, remember I would say the emergence of LLMs is only a few years in. It is the fastest adopted piece of technology in the history of mankind. There is nothing that has had this level of adoption rate. So I think let's just put that down. There is no precedent for this, right? The internet, the wheel, fire, etc., took tens of thousands of years for it to adopt. This, within a matter of weeks, was hundreds of millions of users. So at the same time, it's an emerging technology. And if we look back a little bit about how AI was built, if you go to the origin stories, a lot of these weren't designed to do what they're doing now. So the large language model had very different applications when it was started, right? For example, Google used a very early version of an LLM to predict what the next word was going to be in your search box. So when you typed dog, it would predict food. It wasn't analyzing other people's names or other people's searches. It was predicting what it thought your next word was going to be. That's like at the very beginning. That was the beginning of a large language model. It's not intelligence in the sense that it is fully context aware. It is just a very sophisticated mathematical tool that predicts the next word. And then the rationale was, well, maybe I can use that to predict in a translation context. So I'm speaking to you in English. You might be speaking to me in Mandarin. You can't translate word for word. You want to translate whole sentences to be able to capture the meaning. So large language models were then used for translation purposes. And then someone said, well, hold on, wait a minute. Maybe I can build something that appears intelligent and that is predicting answers to a question. And the answer was yes. If you give it enough data, it can respond with a computational answer to your question. And then you keep going down and you keep feeding it more data and you keep refining the model. And eventually you end up with something that can predict the next 2,000 pages of code. But the origin story was a prediction tool, not a coding tool. So you're going to see some weird results, but that's not to say that using this methodology, whether it's LLMs or growing into something like neural nets, if those tools, that's not in question. I think anybody here, there's no one in here who's like doubting that this is a fad and somehow will return to the way things were. I think it's consensus now that this is well afoot. Whether this technology or that technology becomes dominant, whether LLMs lead to AGI, artificial general intelligence, is a whole different story. But I think everybody's adamant that this is happening. This is here to stay.
And I guess some people are panicking.
Yeah. And I was panicking a bit, if I'm quite honest, about a decade ago.
So yeah,
Can
let
we talk a bit about that?
Yeah, take me through your career, which is quite interesting.
Well, I don't know if it's interesting, but thank you for saying that. I mean, I had a very classic. I studied media, and we studied together, which was amazing. So I studied the film, video, graphic design portion, and then the other part of my course was computer science. And the rationale was that if I compare engineering with design and creativity, there might be a path for an interesting career somewhere in there, but I hadn't really figured out what that was going to be. And so that's always been mixing the two. It's a left brain, right brain type of approach. Can I apply engineering to design, and can I apply artistic flair to technology and engineering? And over time, I kind of created a path for myself. I did traditional advertising for a while. I wanted to do film also, and video. We did a short film together, and I used a lot of technology to do post-production and all sorts of things. And then over time, I realized that where I got excited about was where it's in the real world. It's where people and technologies and brands and experiences all come together in the physical world. I felt like being able to create a transformational moment for someone in the physical world, to me, was very exciting and interesting. And so that led me down the path of, I did automotive for many years. I did experience design for like big auto show spaces, product, so apps and those types of technologies, XR, VR. So I really migrated, but applying the same principles of art to engineering and engineering to art.
And what's your design philosophy in that? What's your core thing that you try to infuse in these projects?
I mean, I'm very much a people first. I think for me is, can I create something that is genuinely useful, genuinely delightful, and a net positive using new and emerging technologies? I mean, so I would say philosophically, if I had one headline, I want the world to be more creative place everywhere we go. I think in the world that we live today, we all know when we're unhappy. Most of us, even if we don't consider ourselves creative people, you're more unhappy if you consume more content and experiences, and you tend to be happier if you have the opportunity to be creative. And it doesn't have to be art. Anything is creative, but it just has, you've contributed something. I think we're inherently creative creatures. And so 10 years ago, I ran a program with Ford. It was a research program to try and identify what would be the in-car experience when cars became fully autonomous. So some of that work became Ford's autonomous program. But I pitched to them that we should do a parallel program where we also research how will AI transform the discipline of design, research and design, thinking that it would just be a little bit of interesting PR. And so we went through a 4D process. discover, design, develop, deploy. And at each of those steps, we had the latest in AI tools and algorithms and technologies, even like research papers that we had applied to some of that work. And at the end of the work stream, I was a little bit shocked because I realized that roughly 1/3 of the work that I had billed forward for could be replaced by AI. And what I mean replaced, not automated, but certainly so heavily disrupted that it was difficult to charge the same amounts for those portions of work. And so that made me quite anxious about selfishly my career, but also the industry as a whole. An industry where people like us, who are creative people who don't really fit very well anywhere else, what's our value if what we do is being eroded and being changed and being handed over to technologies? So I did a talk. I was invited at South by Southwest. I thought it was going to be a small session, but like 1,000 people showed up. So clearly I wasn't the only one with that anxiety. And so I've been on a mission since to basically lean into the technology and not just, my goal is to not be on the receiving end of the technology, but to lean in enough that we become the architects of this technology. We influence how it should show up and how it should elevate what we do, instead of being in this position where we feel like we're in competition with the technology. So I've done a bunch of projects here. I've done a bunch of talks. I have a podcast. It's only 5 months old, but where I interview people who have been disrupted. So in some cases, completely lost their revenue stream, but found new ways to adopt the technology, to create new revenues and still be creative.
And so either change or die, basically.
So I don't know if I agree that it's adapt or die. I think, yes, there will be for sure, and there already is some things on our, when we bill hourly on our projects, there are some items on our services that just don't exist anymore. Or they're so heavily disrupted that they don't really justify a full-time role anymore. However, at the same time, we are seeing a productivity increase. So I know you mentioned the controversy around development, and a lot of developers are, spreading the word that AI is creating a lot of noise. True. But if you look at tools that are just a few weeks old now, like Claude Code, it's a fantastic tool. It's an agentic coder, which means it doesn't just write code. It can route across multiple platforms. It can do some backend work. So it's coming. But we haven't really seen a lot of layoffs on our side, on the developer side. And the reason is because we pick developers who are also architects. They need to know what efficient code looks like so that they can evaluate what the AI is doing. There are some areas that AI just doesn't code in yet. There are some areas that for security reasons, we don't let AI code. And then there are also, being able to design an application that exists in the real world, you need to be context aware in a way that currently AI can't. For example, we help to develop some of these XR glasses and experiences that have AI plus context aware content. So digital content overlaid on the real world. You need to understand how those things work. The AI needs to be able to interpret that right now you're in the car. What's more important is eyes on the road and not a text message with a picture that would take over your screen real estate. So things like that are obvious to us as humans are not necessarily obvious to AI. So increasingly, we're finding that our developers are coding in specific areas that AI doesn't work into, or taking the 10,000-foot view. So this narrative that it's adapt or die has some truth. You do need to adapt. You do need to lean in. And there are some roles that are disappearing. A lot of post-production is going to move to AI for sure. But at the same time, we're also finding that, especially in the content space, if you look at the work that through the line agencies are doing and content companies are doing, there is a clear fork in the road. You're either embracing AI in your content, and that's a certain type of content. So the big blockbuster movies, I think there is no doubt in my mind that they're going to adopt those technologies. Why should you pay $350,000 for the next Spider-Man movie, $350 million for the next Spider-Man movie when you can do it for less than 100? I think that's going to be a clear area. But at the same time, content like this, content where people want to interface with people, be it in the real world or over content, those areas here are right now booming. And one of the areas that for us has been massive growth has been our work in experiences and experiential marketing. So where people meet in person. So it could be anything from themed entertainment to big conferences to sponsorship at sporting events. That's becoming more important, in part as a byproduct of the pandemic, where we took it away from each other for a short while, and now we realized how valuable that is. But also in this world where AI is taking over a lot of screen-based content, a lot of screen-based work, the more valuable interactions are the ones that we do in person that are more authentic. So it's not necessarily die. I think there will be some shedding, but at the same time, there is an opportunity, but you have to lean into it, and you have to do it now.
So I know you have to leave soon, but so maybe if we can return to the film part. And I saw a video on this photographer, and on his website, he had, I'm a photographer that captures photons of events that actually happened, which I thought was a really good positioning, sort of on the other hand, because we're kind of all blown away with these clips you see on Facebook or whatever. But then there's very few examples where I sort of see something that's AI, where kind of that's not on the front of your mind. It kind of it flavors the experience, and most of the time it's just so much. It's just basically shit. It's like I would never pay to watch some AI slop. It doesn't, because it's like if you watch like an animation, you have this kind of, we have like an agreed with the creator that this is a what do you call it? A suspension of disbelief.
Yeah, sustaining disbelief.
Yeah, we have sort of an agreement that this is not real, this is animation, and people can't fly, but we accept it and we buy it. And I find that because AI is so close to the real thing, it's kind of it's in a way it's kind of like it's lying, it's pretending, but it's so close that it makes us it tricks us, and nobody likes being tricked or fooled.
I think you've hit the nail on the head, right? But that's true of every piece of content, right? I especially if you're in the space of advertising and marketing, I've always believed strongly that there's a clear line between convincing someone and coercing someone. To me, convincing someone is we both have the same information, and then I convince you to see the world the way I do. Coercing someone is I hold back some of that information and I convince you to see my point of view. It's in this latter example that you feel robbed, you feel cheated, right? I was sold a car, but he didn't tell me there was a leak in the gearbox, right? I was coerced into buying it, and I think the same is true for anything in the creative space. If you are a photographer and you generate a spectacular image of an animal and then you submit it to a competition for wildlife, you've coerced your audience. The trust is broken. And I do think that that's a clear line that can't be crossed. At the same time, we go watch Titanic knowing that we're not filming, we're not seeing the actual boat. We go see Marvel movies by the millions, knowing that we're not seeing something real. So then the question becomes, do I need to know that they spent $250 million and 3 years for the story to have more meaning? Perhaps. Maybe that was true also in the 60s with movies like Cleopatra, that in today's dollars would have been $500 million. So maybe there's some value in that. But at the same time, I think it's going to weed out a lot of those types of movies that we went to see because they were expensive. Maybe that's not such a bad thing. Maybe if everybody can generate big spectacle movies, well, maybe that means that we're going to have to focus back on what is true and authentic, and that's story, because who knows how it was made, and does that actually matter? Isn't it like the connection we make with the characters, how it makes me feel, and how I come out of it that really matters?
So why haven't I seen anything that moves me that's sort of AI made?
Well, if you've been to movies in the past 6 months, I guarantee you that, I'm not talking like niche, French, Nouvelle Vague style movie. I'm talking like big budget movies. I guarantee you that there were full sequences in some of them that would have been generated, and you probably didn't see it. So yes, maybe you were coerced into something, thinking that they used a flame suite and multiple hours of 3D modeling. Maybe some of us in the room will be pissed off and say, hey, I wish they'd told me this was an AI sequence. But when you're talking about storytelling and sustaining disbelief, I feel like most of audiences just want to believe that it's real for the short few hours that they're spending with you in the theater. Who cares if it was a miniature, 3D animation, or AI generation, right? It's if you're showing me something and telling me this is real when it was not, that's when the trust is broken for me. And obviously, if it's poor, if it's badly done, and the character's got 7 fingers and 1 eye that's droopy, yeah, that's just poor use of the tools. But that's true for 3D animation, also. So, but I would tell you that the tools right now, there's been some, if you look at a lot of the models right now, there's open source models that anybody can download. You can put on your own machines. You can train the model and make it your own. If you think of like WAN, for example, WAN 2.2, I think, or 2.3 now, download it, put it on your machine. If you're a DOP, train your footage on it, and then you'll be able to generate content that looks like your work that you own, that you're not feeding back to a company in Silicon Valley that can then generate off of your work. You become effectively the author of work that looks like the way you like to shoot. And I'm seeing directors here in LA that are beginning to do this. And so it's not yet used for movies that it's maybe just a couple scenes. It's not for full movies yet, but certainly in pre-production, people are doing complete pre-production movies in AI that look fantastic, that look very close to the finished thing. And they're doing it on models that they've trained themselves on their own footage. So that's a whole new area of opportunity for creative people.
Instead of asking what will AI do next, I believe we should be asking, how are we going to use AI to create the future that we want? Join us for breakfast.
So to finish off, going back to your YouTube channel on For Breakfast, where you've interviewed, who have you had on there, and what's your biggest takeaways from those conversations that you can hand off to?
So top line, I've had a famous car designer who designed the new Mustang recently. I've had a music producer who had a fantastic Malibu house doing lo-fi music.
Today, we're talking to Jeremy Dow, a successful music entrepreneur who saw his record label be completely disrupted by AI and who decided to reinvent the business of music and sponsorship with his new company, Acrylic. Join us for breakfast.
For several months, we were doing about $40,000 in just streaming revenue, which for an indie label that was established a year before is just insane.
Yeah.
And because of that, our distribution partner gave us a little over $500,000 advance. The problem is that just 3 months after we got that advance in 2022, AI music was announced. And the playlists that we depended on grew in size. And we started looking at these playlists and be like, why are we losing 75% of our revenue right now? And we couldn't recognize any of these artists. We didn't really know where they were coming from, but still the result was the same. Producers coming to my house saying, Jeremy, what are we gonna do? I've got to drive an Uber now. And me thinking, well, we're the label, like I'm in bed with you. Like, I don't know what we're gonna do. And that was really the moment, like the seminal moment where the idea behind Acrylic really was born. Like when we were really back against the wall and I was like, well, what's the difference between millions of emerging artists and AI robots?
How did that feel, that moment? Because obviously you came out the other side, but did it take you by surprise?
I recall the moment very, very clearly and vividly.
Like when you got the advanced, where was there something in the back of your head saying, this is sort of sunsetting, or this is the beginning of growth? How were you seeing?
Oh, when we got the advance, it was beautiful. I mean, we had an in-house artist, a designer, who was making all of our cover art, because a lot of these lo-fi guys, like, they made amazing music, but not all of them, you know, were into art and their artwork and whatever, and we wanted to have these incredible covers. And so we kind of created a world where we could make this beautiful art and have beautiful visual art and videos. So like, no, those 2 years were some of the best of my life, if not the best to this point, where I felt like I had creative freedom. I didn't have a boss, you know, telling me you got to do this.
But could you see a trajectory? Could you go, this is it. This is going to keep going up.
Yeah.
I have a...
100%.
And so when that playlist started to transform, was it a shock?
It was a shock.
Complete shock?
It was a complete shock. The announce of AI music and the fact that the world was saying, and not just the world, like people were actually telling me, Jeremy, like your music, I can make it with a button now. And I'd look at him and be, really? You can go talk to Paraguayan harpists and say, hey, let's pair you with cool producers in LA to make this music that no one has made before with these instruments that are, you know, hundreds of years old, and, you know, be in the front page of the Asunción, Paraguay arts section of their main, you know, newspaper, you know, and create opportunities for all these people around the world. Like, you can do that with robots? And I refused to believe it, Yann. I refused.
Did you, I mean, I know the first time I saw a piece of AI video, you know, I studied film, I studied media, I wanted to become a director. I did some commercials, and I thought this was a career path for me. Yeah. And when I saw the first ones, I thought, really, it's going to completely devalue. Even if I felt as an artist, it didn't have the depth, and I missed some of the humanness. I was concerned that it was just going to devalue it as a whole, because it would muddy the water. You may have that one nice jewel of a human crafted track, but if you have 20,000 others that are 80%, 90% to the person who's just got their headphones at Starbucks and doing some work, it's a nuance, the difference. Yeah. It's just going to demolish the industry. Did you think this is the end of music?
I mean, the idea did cross my mind, but that is when I came up with the idea for Acrylic, and it is really at that point. Because we were all desperate. I remember we were running out of money. We owed our distributor on the advance, and we were running out of options. And that's when I literally was on my desk, and I got up. I have a board behind me, a whiteboard, and I put a line through it, and I put millions of emerging artists on the left and AI robots on the right. And I asked myself, what is the difference between the two? How do we fight this? And it came to me, and I was like, hold on. Hyper-local, hyper-engaged fan bases. AI robots don't have fans. So no one cares about their music, but we can prove that people care about ours. Maybe it's only 100 fans, but those 100 fans are human. So we better bet on human IP, because this war is not over. And that's when really things changed. That's when I had the idea for the acrylic platform. And then, things grew from there.
I've had, who else have I had? I've had business leaders in software but I would say the common thread between all of them is they are people who were very successful, very committed to their career path. And then there was an inflection point in their career where AI stepped in and either made it very difficult or impossible for them to continue their business as it was. That's the common thread. And it's not I hope it's not a depressing channel. The idea, they're all showing what they did to come out the other side. So for example, the car designer, now instead of spending hours rendering a sketch to try and convince his clients that this is the right design, he will do some rapid sketches and then use AI to create 20,000 variations. And then using his artistic flair and craft, he will select those that are most valuable and then immediately generate them into 3D models, into fake TV commercials. So you can design your car and then see it in a commercial or just driving on the street.
And but really began to transform the process for me and my team was the rise of these sort of rapid 3D modeling tools like Blender and Maya and now Gravity Sketch, which is the ability to basically sketch spatially with virtual reality and augmented reality, and so a designer could go from sketching on paper to building a model, but now they can sketch directly in 3D. Right. And so that sort of translation step from 2D to 3D is now irrelevant. You're just going straight to 3D. And so and in doing so, we began to bypass a lot of the traditional workflows with clay models and working with digital sculptors, and the designers themselves were beginning to do more and more of their own sculpting and sending data directly to milling machines and only working with the clay modelers in sort of more of the finishing stages. Right. Yeah.
And so it means that from the challenge that he had as a creative was the vision I have in my head, how do I convince the accountants and the marketers in this automotive group to see it the way I do? And so the designers that succeeded there were people who could sketch great. Wasn't always the best idea, but they were the people who sketched the best. And now using AI, you don't have to be the best sketch artist. You have to have the best taste. You have to know what great looks like. You have to know when there's a real white space that no one else is going, and you need to, drill deeper on that one. And so the tools are here to accelerate, and I think used well, they are an opportunity to make the world more creative. I mean, at the same time, there is a place also where those accountants and marketers can generate their own cars themselves. And so far, it doesn't sound as though they're doing as good a job at figuring out what the right, design is and what is culturally relevant and what is a beautiful design and why. So, but that's one example.
So having good taste and knowing your art history still matters.
Yeah. And then also, I was reading recently about the lost generation, which I think you and I are both a part of, which they call them Zennials. So we tend to be born, I believe it's 78 to 85, something like that. It's a generation that was born without the internet. We know what a dial-up telephone is. We remembered having to walk to the television to change station. But at the same time, our education and our career meant that we used the internet and had to adopt to new technologies. So we're not quite Gen Xers who learned about the internet later in life. We're not millennials who were born with social media and the internet. We're somewhere in between. And so I think that makes us very well suited to helping adapt to change. But if I look at my kids and the Gen Alpha, the generation coming before the millennials, they were born with AI. They were born with social media. They have no hang up about it. They're generating memes. They're using it to express themselves. And they have no qualms about it because they haven't experienced a world where a Disney movie was hand drawn. They've seen them as 3D characters all their lives. And so I think we might be the generation that feels this anxiety the most, because we remember a world where it didn't exist. But at the same time, we're probably the generation also that will help make the transition because we have a foot in before and after. But my gut tells me that the next generation coming isn't going to have the same qualms about it, and will adopt it freely. It's hard to know what that means for society, for where value is created, where purpose lies. What would it mean to be creative if you're co-creating together with AI? But at the same time, I know that the hangups we have is ours and not necessarily the next generation's.
Yeah. Okay. So Yann, I know you have to shoot. So thank you so much for being here in Tønsberg with us for this chat.
Yeah, I mean, my pleasure. I wish I could be there in person. I've been to a few film festivals, and I love the energy and the passion that people have for storytelling. And I would say to the people in the room who are worried about AI, focus on that. The storytelling still matters. How we connect with each other still matters. Whatever the tools show up. And my podcast is designed to be a platform for creatives to talk to each other, to exchange ideas, and to, adapt to the change. So, feel free to reach out. I'm sure Ian will give you my contact details.
Excellent. Thank
All
you,
the
Yann.
best. Thank you.
Bye-bye.